Hello everyone, it's Em. We are excited to review a new promo for you. This is Olyn of Urmstead. I think we're a day late on this one, but for the rest of the week, if you are playing a game of Eternal, this card is free if you win a game, and you get up to 4 copies of it, so you can complete your playset by playing a game every day for this week. Olyn of Urmstead is a 3-cost, double fire, double justice, 2 fight, 2 health hero who has when Olyn attacks, you get +1 power this turn, always a favorite of mine, and summon when you may move another unit of your choice without flying to the top of your deck. Spend your remaining power to give it that much strength and health. Notably does not work with Olyn's attack ability to give you a temporary bonus power, but if you're playing multiple Olyns in a set and you happen to like run into one of them, they are going to synergize with each other, which is kind of nice. Overall, I'm not hugely fond of this card. We have like a couple of thoughts about it. I think there are some potential decks that it can belong to, but overall, the power level on it seems a little bit weak. It's doing a number of different things, and I feel like the flavor isn't quite matching the things that it is doing. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the cost. So it is a 3 cost for a 2/2 hero, which is standard. Like if you want like a really good like valuable unit that's going to stick on the board most of the time, that's usually a 3/3 or a 2/3 or something like that, where at least 3 health or at least 3 attack is something where you kind of want to be at that baseline for the card to be decent in a fight. Otherwise, it's going to trade down most of the time when you are actually attacking with it, which is a problem because this card has to attack to get that +1 power bonus. On the other hand, this is Rakano, so you'll have access to a wide variety of small removal, as well as a wide variety of good removal in Justice, for as well as ways to buff Olyn and actually like get the card up, so force people to sort of get into tricks. Typically, this ability +1 power when you are attacking belongs in Praxis. You'll have like the red yellow setup, and when you attack, you'll either reduce the cost of your cards, or you will, I believe that's Champion of Impulse, or something like Rombo, where if you hit, you'll actually reduce the cost of your cards. And Champion of Impulse gives you the +1 power temporary that Olyn has. So like this is a little different in green because you can actually buff it up with stuff like Victor's Cry, Finest Hour, all of the different things that actually buff your cards and like basically just give you a little bit of a boost. So the card forces tricks a little bit more often. I think that's something that might be a little underlooked in terms of its potential power level, but without those cards, without like Finest Hour or other things actually in your hand, that ability becomes a little bit weaker. I do think it's nice that you can like play a 3-drop, attack with Olyn, and still have power left to Finest Hour, which is kind of neat. So there's some potential there at least, and the additional +1 power also can be useful if you want to like quickly jump to a 5-drop. But in Rakano, what 5 drops are you really jumping towards is sort of the question there. A lot of Rakano stuff tends to go like very, very reliable early game and not so much in the mid range. They don't typically have like the same kind of like huge bombs that you'll see in Time or in other colors. That's not always true, and there certainly are some like large green dinos and large green like Valkyries and things like that. But I feel like this sort of like maximum power thing is something that is very, very good in Praxis and less good in Rakano for certain reasons. The other thing that I'm a little bit sketchy about here is the fact that this is double fire, double justice, which means it can consistently playing it on turn 3 when you actually want to is pretty difficult. For something like Champion of Impulse, where you actually have to fulfill a particular requirement to get the +1 power, that's something that you can at least do on turn 4 after you've played the card out. In this case, in order to even play the card, you have to get double influence in both colors, which means you have to be very, very solidly in Rakano to access this particular setup. So just getting a basic 2/2 out is going to be a little bit of a struggle, and you might miss your drop, which means that basically you'll be down a 3-drop on a turn if you have a weird draw. It kind of messes with your mulligan and messes with your base setup. I think it's a particular problem with Olyn. I think this card could probably stand to be a little bit less deep on the influence structure, and in doing so would be a much more reliable card. On the other hand, Rakano has access to a lot of good tools right now. Furious Magnaventress is just like an amazing card that came out recently, and they actually have just a really decent amount of stuff going on in their mid range already that's making this card a little bit less necessary. So this is a card that might belong in other archetypes later on after some of that has like actually happened. And we haven't actually talked about the summon yet. So summon says you may move another unit of your choice without flying to the top of your deck. Spend your remaining power to give it that much strength and health. Okay, so Olin is a dinosaur wrangler. Um, I'm a little disappointed that this card does not move dinosaurs. A unit without flying is definitely a more powerful effect and something that you can use more effectively in Throne, but also that means that you can't get flying dinosaurs amongst other things, which, eh. And also, like, it's just like it's a little bit too much card selection for me. I feel like being able to access whatever you want is just kind of like a little bit more boring, especially since you're putting that card on the top of your deck, thus basically denying you the randomness of the draw. You are going to get a lot of benefit out of denying yourself the randomness of the draw, particularly if you're getting a card that actually gets a huge bonus off of having a bonus to strength and health. Cards with double damage, cards with flying, if you could get flying, but cards with unblockable, any card that has like lifesteal or any number of like good battle skills but tends to have like a weaker stat line, Olyn can fetch those cards, give them a huge boost, and then when you play them the next turn, they're significantly more powerful. I think charge and double damage are both like really good points. Anything where you can actually like deal damage equal to your strength or do anything that actually like plays with the card's stat lines, that's going to be really, really powerful. You're not going to have access to as wide a variety of tools as like say like getting into shadow for unblockable or getting into time for whatever it is that you want, because once again you do have to be pretty solidly Rakano for this card to be worth it on the play due to its fairly weak stat line and its fairly weak attack ability. So with all of that in mind, the card is also a gunslinger. That's neither here nor there. I think it's a nice little boost that you can actually use in certain tribal mechanics, but tribal gunslingers doesn't really exist that much in Expedition, so it's not a huge deal. But with all of this in mind, looking at the whole package of this card, I think this card is pretty niche. It doesn't seem to belong in a wide variety of places. It has a very limited scope of where you want to put it. You probably want to set it out in a Rakano deck, use it to get to like good 5-drops, and then of course you can reliably play a 5-drop off the top of your deck when you summon the card, because you actually get to draw that card the next turn when you're attacking with Olyn. So if you're looking for a very specific Rakano card and the card happens to cost more power than you're usually able to use, you can actually do some pretty wild stuff with that pretty quickly to just search out a card. Later in the game, it does have a little bit more of a boost, because when you're playing it down, you can spend a bunch of your power on basically making sure that your next draw is a really, really good one with a bunch of bonus strength and health, which is kind of nice. So it does mean that Olyn has a little bit more late game presence, but all of that is very delayed gratification. You have to actually get to the unit, you have to play the unit the next turn, so that's not a card that when you top deck it at like 8 power is going to save your life. It's just something where the card actually does sort of like synergize with a bunch of other stuff that you want to do, but it's very creature focused. It's not going to be good on defense. It's not going to be amazing on offense because the card has such a weak stat line. I think there's just a few too many problems with this card overall for it to be like especially effective. I'd look forward to seeing this card buffed a little bit. I think that playing with it should be actually fun, and building a deck around it will be a pretty exciting time. I'm sure that if you play a Rakano deck that actually plays like decent units and gets into this sort of like space, this is something where like, especially if you're playing in bronze level and you're just trying to like get yourself leveled up, this is something where the card will actually like do what it's supposed to do and be pretty reliable, because Rakano is in general a pretty reliable faction, and this card doesn't do anything to really like dismiss that ability. It really kind of works with that. So it is something where if you're just getting started for the first time and you want to build an Olyn deck, that's probably going to be a pretty cheap deck to build, and you can get some decent power out of it and everything like that. But overall, like in looking at this in terms of like the broader Expedition meta, the broader Throne meta, I really don't think this card is going to have a huge impact. But still, it's an interesting design. I think it's a flavor fail that it doesn't get dinosaurs. I think there's a couple too many like different things going on with the card. It could definitely stand to be simplified down a little bit and maybe just made like a little bit stronger. But like, yeah, overall, tutoring is a pretty interesting and powerful effect that can be very good. Ramping is a pretty interesting and powerful effect that can be good. Putting both of those things on a 2/2 for 3 with quad influence is a little bit much and might not prove to be that effective. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the card. I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll definitely be back with more card reviews soon, and we should be streaming tonight, Thursday, 6:45 MST and 5:45 PST. So if you want to catch us there, that'll be Twitch TV/LocoPojo. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.